Welcome to the Deep Dive. You recently sent us a fascinating article. Is mediocrity even a word? It's time to let go. That
The,
title really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
it absolutely does. It hits on this almost unspoken pressure we all feel, this constant push for excellence that society seems to, or value above all else.
Yeah,
And lurking in the background is this idea of mediocrity, which feels like the ultimate condemnation.
exactly. So in our deep dive today, we want to really get under the skin of this concept. What are we actually talking about when we say mediocrity? How does
Yeah.
it play out in our lives?
hmm
And most importantly, is it actually a useful idea when we're trying to learn, grow, and navigate the inevitable challenges we face?
hmm
Because sometimes it feels like the way we use the word mediocrity carries this heavy weight of, moral judgment. Is that your take on it too?
That's a really insightful way to frame it. Yeah. What's striking about the article right from the start is how it points out that mediocrity isn't some objective standard we can all, measure ourselves against.
Yeah.
It's so often a label we apply, either to ourselves, feeling like we're falling short, or that gets projected onto us by external expectations.
Okay, let's unpack that label a bit.
Mm,
If it's primarily a judgment, what's the real harm it can do? The article touches on how it can actually get in the way of genuine self-awareness.
precisely. Think about when you've maybe felt that sting of not measuring up. The article suggests that internalizing that mediocre label can act like a real drag, a serious drag.
Mhm.
Instead of looking at areas where you want to develop with a sense of possibility and curiosity, you're burdened by this underlying feeling of being inadequate.
Okay.
It fuels self-doubt and anxiety, which ironically makes taking those steps towards growth even more difficult. It becomes this negative feedback loop.
It's almost like you've prejudged your potential, so why even put in the effort? It's inherently demotivating, isn't it?
Totally.
The article makes a strong point that this label really serves as an unnecessary obstacle.
And it's such a static term for something that's constantly in motion, which is, our own development. The article rightly highlights that progress isn't this smooth upward trajectory, not at all.
Right.
There are periods of rapid growth, but also plateaus, setbacks, and times when we feel like we're just, treading water.
Yeah.
It's in those in-between moments that the temptation to label ourselves mediocre can be strongest. But the key, as the article emphasizes, is resisting that urge to let it define us during those non-linear phases of our journey.
Right. So when we do recognize areas where we want to improve, the article suggests a shift in how we perceive that self-awareness.
Mhm.
Instead of it being this harsh negative verdict, how else can we approach it?
This is where it gets really interesting. The article proposes we move from a place of judgment to one of genuine curiosity.
Curiosity, okay.
So instead of thinking, I'm mediocre because I haven't mastered the skill yet, try a more curious approach. Like, okay, what specific steps can I take to improve this particular aspect of the skill?
Hmm.
What resources or, feedback could help me get there? I see.
This reframes self-awareness not as a condemnation, but as a starting point, an invitation to take action, as the article puts it.
That makes a lot of sense. But the article also brings up a really important point to consider, which is the risk of settling into mediocrity as a comfort zone. Because sometimes feeling okay can become, just okay, and we lose that drive to push further.
Absolutely. That initial feeling of good enough can be quite seductive, can't it? It's easy for that to become the default setting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the real challenge shifts. It's no longer just about identifying areas for growth. It's about sustaining that intrinsic motivation to actually move beyond that comfortable middle ground.
Yeah.
The article even touches on this idea it calls inspirational syndrome, where simply realizing you could improve feels like progress in itself without actually taking those concrete steps. The real work lies in consistently choosing to move forward. And that directly leads into the article's emphasis on action over excessive contemplation. It talks about how overthinking our perceived shortcomings can actually reinforce that feeling of mediocrity.
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating here is the article's focus on the power of just doing. Taking action, even if it's a small step, can break that cycle of self-judgment and overthinking.
Right.
The example of going to the gym, even when you're not feeling particularly motivated, is so relatable, isn't it?
Totally.
How many times have we mentally debated whether or not to work out? But the article's point is if you just go without that internal argument, you bypass all those potential reasons and excuses.
Yeah, you just cut through the noise.
Exactly. And that principle, as they rightly point out, applies across so many areas of life.
It really does. It's like Sometimes the most effective way to quiet that nagging voice of self-doubt is simply to start moving. But there's another crucial angle the article highlights, which is the demoralizing impact of believing you're mediocre while you're actually putting in the effort.
Yes, this is such a key insight. If you're genuinely struggling with something, investing your time and energy, and at the same time telling yourself, well, I'm probably just mediocre at this anyway, that's incredibly undermining.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't fuel your perseverance, it actively drains it. The article is quite clear on this, that even briefly entertaining the thought of mediocrity in those challenging moments can be really detrimental, almost like trying to swim against a strong current, you know?
It's like you're fighting a battle on two fronts, against the actual difficulty of the task and against your own negative self-perception. Which I guess brings us to a broader question that the article raises. Is the core issue the concept of mediocrity itself? Or is it more about how society uses that word to define our worth or success?
That's a really thought-provoking question. The article suggests that when we think or say, I'm mediocre, it often feels like we're assigning ourselves this fixed, unchangeable identity. Like, this is just who I am.
Right, like a permanent state.
But the reality is, our abilities and our progress are constantly evolving. It's really just a snapshot of where we are at a particular point in time. We're always learning, adapting, and growing, so that label can become outdated almost immediately.
So if constantly assessing ourselves for mediocrity isn't the helpful approach, what is? The article points towards an antidote, right?
Yeah, it does. The article argues that the real antidote is actively choosing not to engage with the idea of mediocrity at all.
To refuse it.
Pretty much. Instead of getting caught up in that internal self-assessment, the focus should be on taking practical steps forward. Reevaluating your strategies if something isn't working, developing new habits, seeking advice or guidance from mentors, productive stuff. These are all productive actions. Getting bogged down in debating whether or not you're mediocre simply isn't. It's just wasted energy.
I like that idea of refusing to engage. It connects with this concept the article introduces about mental hygiene, the power of pushing through and taking action without getting lost in overthinking.
Exactly. It's about clearing that mental clutter, that constant noise of self-doubt and judgment, and simply concentrating on what needs to be done. The article frames it not as some extraordinary feat of willpower, but almost as a fundamental aspect of navigating life. Effectively, you have goals, responsibilities, so you just get on with it.
It's that quiet resilience, isn't it? The article puts it so well. It doesn't ask for recognition. It just exists.
Yeah.
That consistent effort, that ability to keep moving forward, even when you don't feel particularly inspired, seems far more valuable in the long run than like fleeting moments of brilliance.
Absolutely. That sustained effort and commitment will always outweigh sporadic bursts of inspiration. And this naturally leads to the article's powerful call to completely reframe our thinking and simply dump mediocrity from our vocabulary altogether.
I love that idea. Just get rid of the word. If we consciously remove the label, we also eliminate that inherent sense of judgment that comes with it. So what remains then?
Pure action, according to the article. Relentless effort, a commitment to continuous learning, and an unwavering resolve. The emphasis shifts from striving to feel extraordinary every single day to simply showing up and consistently moving forward.
Okay.
And when you inevitably encounter obstacles, the crucial question transforms from, am I mediocre, to the much more constructive and empowering, what's the next step I can take?
So the final takeaway really boils down to this. Those labels we apply to ourselves don't actually define us, our actions do. Is that fair?
Precisely. It's about taking ownership of your choices and your efforts, regardless of whether you or anyone else might be tempted to label them as mediocre. It's about the process of doing, the continuous striving, the ongoing evolution.
Okay, let's bring this back to you, our listener. We've taken a deep dive into this really thought-provoking article and explored the concept of mediocrity. We've seen how it can often be a subjective and ultimately harmful judgment, how growth is rarely a straight line, and the importance of shifting our focus from self-critique to taking meaningful action.
And ultimately, the article offers a compelling argument for actively choosing not to engage with the idea of mediocrity at all, and instead prioritizing consistent effort, a commitment to learning, and unwavering resilience in the face of challenges. It's quite powerful, really.
It is. So as you navigate your day, maybe consider how your own internal dialogue might be using the word mediocre. What might shift for you if you consciously decided to replace that judgment with a laser focus on your very next actionable step? It's about embracing the journey of growth and self-discovery rather than getting stuck on potentially damaging labels. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. Here's to your ongoing journey of purposeful action and continuous self-discovery.